finding perspective in these discombobulated times. So that's what this video is going to be about. And there's a lot of people, you just felt it. And breathing, that's a really good thing to do. But I'm hoping that this video brings some peace to people and a little bit more perspective. It's kind of like, what the heck is going on? And this is a way to look at it. So there's different ways that we put our attention. We have spotlight focus, like when we're task oriented, we're working something out, our thoughts are going around one thing and it can consume us, which it could be right now politics and what's happening in the government and these kind of things, and the disagreements between the people in this government. And then there's floodlight, which is like the big floodlight you see outside. And that's when our attention kind of is in a broader perspective. And we often find that floodlight perspective when we're at peace, we have our foundation, we've got all our needs met. I'm not talking about wants, but our needs met. And we can go into kind of that space. It's also the space of creativity. That's when we're in floodlight attention, that's when all of a sudden a new thought appears, and then we're seated. And then that's the interesting thing, is that we'll go from that floodlight into the spotlight attention. And so that kind of gives an idea of how our minds work with how our attention goes. So a lot of people are really, really spotlighted, focused right now, because they're like waking up every day to check their phone to find out what else has been happening, in the world, what kind of discombobulation is happening, what's narratives they're working on. And boy, that can be exhausting, especially when you really are pinpointing your attention. But what I want to do is just kind of back up a long way and let's bring us into a broader perspective, a floodlight attention, to kind of look at it, instead of looking at like the problems that we're seeing in the world, but how humans work. We play out in stories. We live within stories. And these stories have narratives. This is the theme of the narrative, the theme of the story. So we use the United States. The United States was founded upon an idea, and then the narrative around that framework, a narrative took place. And we said, okay, this is the story we want to be in part of. Now, a lot of people agreed upon it and said, okay, yeah, this is the story. I fit into this story. I'll fit in to make this story work. And we're doing this unconsciously and consciously. And so it just kind of becomes reality. And then we're moving along in time, playing out this narrative, playing a character within this narrative. So I could be in a political party, I could change to another political party. And so that's the idea, is that the whole idea is, as we go through life, we keep going, okay, is this working out? Do we like this story, this narrative that we're telling? And for a long time, and most of my life, it seemed like we had some disagreements with it, but we seemed to be able to keep enough people collectively agreed to the story that we're doing this. But then so many things that we wanted to see happen, and how we wanted to see the story change, it wasn't changing. And so it seemed like we were just getting the same thing over and over again. So all of a sudden there's this split in this divide in saying, hey, I want the story to go this way. And then this other side said, I want it to go that way. And each side is so, on board for for what they want and the story and the narrative, and if they want to play a character within that story. And so if we look at it that way, it's like we're all just part of a big story, and then we make collective agreements with each other. It's like, okay, my character, yes, I'll make whatever this little avatar is right here. I will make an agreement to collectively say, okay, I'm going to, in order to keep the peace and keep things working and keep the story going, I'm going to stay in this story, in the narrative. So, what's happening now with the narrative? We want change, and people are really spotlight focused on the new story they want. And there are some people that have a grip on that, and they're saying, I want this. And it seems like the squeaky wheel, the loudest and the angriest are getting all the attention. And because it's like, I want my story to go this way. And I don't care what happens to make that happen. And then there's a lot of people going, I kind of like the story we had. Can we just kind of keep the same story? Can we just go back to the way were doing it before and get back to the peace and the unity and these kind of things? But that's not happening. But just to understand that and to look at it that way, this is how humans work. They operate under these narratives. We're all part of this story, and we're trying to play characters in this story. And so, why am I happy? Why am I content? It's because I don't like the story. And the reason I would say that is that in the narrative that I want to be part of anymore doesn't fit the character that I can play anymore. I have found, stripping away my identities, finding my relationship with time. I feel my character wanting to create something new and be part of a new narrative. And how do I find peace in that? Because it's like, how do you do that with everything that's going on? Well, when I pull myself into that floodlight attention and I look at all the things that are going on, I can look at it from all the points of view, and I can also recognize the narratives that everybody is pushing. And that's the interesting thing, as people are bidding for a story, they're oftentimes tripping over their own heels. But the thing is people, and they're stuck inside of a narrative, and they're pushing certain narratives, wanting a certain outcome. And oftentimes there's moral ideas behind it and virtue ideas behind it, freedom, these kind of things. But I can just go, oh, you just want this narrative to play out. And I could just see right through it. And so what I have come to understand is that there is another narrative that's waking up. And I found it, and I named it Paradigm B. Actually, Chelsea and I named it Paradigm B. And it is this new world. And how can I feel so confident that this new narrative wants to play out in the world? Well, it checks off a lot of boxes for a lot of people, where it's more designed. It is designed for collaboration rather than competition. It's diving into bringing in natural abilities of people and the creative abilities, rather than trying to make people do a job that doesn't have anything to do with what they're called to do in this world. And I can see it because I'm part of it, and I'm creating from the space, and then I'm also collecting and seeing. Like, I will have a thought about something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that feels really good. And I'm like, wow, I'm seeing the world from this different place. And then I run into it where somebody's talking about the exact same thing that I was pondering. And so as I'm moving through time, I don't know exactly where the heck, what exactly we're doing. We're creating. We're building a narrative together. The people that are building the new earth and living from this other place. We're the creators. And what seems to be very cool about this is that we don't need leaders. We don't need somebody that tells us what to do and then we just go and do it. It's like we all realize we're part of the creation process, and we're right now at an event, Nomad Spirit Camp, and there's a lot of people that aren't like looking up to a leader, but they're here wanting to like share. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that. Like that goes right along with what I was thinking. And we're figuring this out, and I'm becoming familiar with terminology that I've heard that have been around for a long time, but I'm starting to hear it more and more. Now I'm starting to understand it, and I'm talking about things that I used to be very resistant to, because I wanted to stay within that other narrative because it was familiar to me. And so I'm having to let go of and be conscious to let go of paradigm, what I would say is paradigm A, so that I can allow this new paradigm B to birth itself. And in that is a lot of growing pains, because it's like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. There's a lot of us that are saying that. Chelsea is, we're both like, what the heck are we going to do next? And it's like, well, we just keep trucking along. We keep following our intuition, and we see more and more evidence of what we're already seeing. All these things about UAPs and UFOs, lots of finding out that a lot of corruption is being brought to the surface, which means that these systems that were set up for the old narrative are being exposed. And so if they're being exposed, that's like the first step in starting a new narrative. And so I don't wake up every day wondering what's happening with the discombobulation in the world, because I know that the best thing that I can bring to the world is my authentic self and peace with me, because that's the thing that I know that there will be people that be like, no, you need to get out there and you need to fight. And that's the thing that is probably the most obvious thing that I recognized before, is people are not, even if you were to fight, your anger is clouding your perspective. And actually, you're a part of the reason why a lot of these things have happened and were brought in, was because you weren't able to hear that you were being used in order for, if there's uncomfortable things, you were used by putting your attention constantly, giving your attention, your power away to these leaders that you think are going to try to keep this narrative together. We still live in this narrative, partly, but there are ways to escape it. Chelsea and I have moved and we're living on the road, and we get a lot of perspective and we can actually feel it when we live mostly rurally, and when we go back into the cities where this narrative and this political discourse is taking place. We can feel it. We can literally feel it as we're driving in. And I'm one person that am totally understanding now feelings and vibrations and frequency, and you can really feel it. And then you see it. You see it as soon as you get the drivers that need to will risk their life to get 5 seconds ahead, in traffic and these kind of things. So that's how it works. That's how we live inside of narratives. We live inside of stories, and we play characters within these stories. And we can come to understand that process. And that's a really great way to pull yourself out. If you feel completely overwhelmed by what's going on, You can choose what narrative you want to be a part of. But I would recommend that if you're getting anxious and you're working from anger to be motivated, you're not going to be bringing the best. In fact, you might be helping the process. And that's the thing about paradigm A, is you have to understand that irony is the thing to really pay attention to. Humility is such a great thing to say, I'm not sure if I'm going in the right direction, because oftentimes people get so connected to their anger and their hatred towards people and ideas that they lose track of where they are inside of the story, and then they get used by the story. So I hope this helps. Floodlight, spotlight, attention, where is it? If you can pull yourself, or if you feel called to and you feel overwhelmed with what's going on in the world, just practice going, okay, I'm part of a narrative, and then just kind of look at what is the narrative that's going on, that's playing out, because there's so many. That's one thing you can do, is there's the really angry people who are going back and forth, and they have their own narrative, and that's the one that gets all the attention. Because look at the other narratives, look at the other points of view, and you can understand that there are other people that they're not siding completely with one side, but they like pieces of what one side is doing. And just you understanding that is helpful will give you a broader perspective, and I'm hoping more peace. So we got through it. Hope you're having a great day.